Well, it's interesting, isn't it, Hadley? Because the polls say Israel's fourth election in 2 years is going to be extremely tight. But of course, that's not new. And it's business as usual in the country's critical technology sector too. We've been speaking with prominent leaders and CEOs about PM Netanyahu's future and what the sector wants from the next government. I spoke with the CEO of the Jerusalem-based VC firm OurCrowd, Jon Medved, to get some insight on the ground. Listen.
Going to be a formidable competitor as always. All the polls are showing his performance actually improving as we go to the final days. And there's a real chance that he actually forms a government relatively easy. On the other hand, there's also a very real chance that we have continued deadlock. It seems as though Israel is leading the world in two things these days. One is vaccination, and the other is elections. I mean, this is our fourth election in less than 2 years. We do a great job of running elections. The problem is the outcomes have not been clear-cut victories for anybody over the past three. That's why we keep on redoing them. So I think the one thing that all Israelis hope is we want a decision. Give us a government. Okay, let's be done with the election at least for 4 more years. But the chances of that happening are not necessarily that great.
Exactly right. So the interesting thing is, clearly this election uncertainty and this constant cycle of elections must be impacting your sector. What happens if we don't have a clear-cut winner? Won't that affect your ability to transact and to attract capital?
Well, it seems not. And that's what's so wild about the times that we're living in, right? Last year should have been a bad year for Israeli high-tech and fundraising in particular, given the COVID virus and given the continued uncertainty of the governmental situation and elections. Except, guess what? It was a banner year. Okay, Israel high-tech fundraising went up from a little over $8 billion for the year to over $10 billion, meaning that there was about a 25% increase year to year for the overall ecosystem. That's great for a company. It's incredible for a country. And especially when that happened in the midst of the COVID pandemic, as well as the electoral uncertainty. Now, this trend is not only continuing, but accelerating as we're into 2021. The data we have already on the first month of January shows $1.5 billion raised, which puts Israel on track for something like a $15 to $18 billion year, another increase of like 50% plus. That would be just unbelievable. So, right now, the tailwinds that are pushing globally digital transformation forward have been very good to Israel and to our tech sector, and it simply is powering ahead, oblivious to pandemic and oblivious to political uncertainty.
So business leaders are saying, look, we've seen this movie before, but no doubt PM Netanyahu is in the fight of his political life. The Trump tailwind that he had in the last election is gone. His rivals are galvanizing. The corruption allegations are mounting, and plenty of Israelis want to say bye-bye Bibi. But if there is a case for continuity, Hadley, Netanyahu will probably find it in Israel's world-leading vaccine rollout, where he's received international praise, Palestinian disparity aside. And while Israel's economy has taken a hit, it's now showing green shoots, right, after the most recent lockdown ended about 6 weeks ago. But of course, issues remain here. There's lots of questions about the relationship with the United States and Team Biden moving forward, questions about Iran, questions about Bibi's reputation in the region as well, particularly after he took a victory lap for the Abraham Accords that raised some eyebrows in Jordan and especially here in the UAE. Hadley?
Dan, I've been covering Bibi Netanyahu for over a decade. He's a true political animal. He's managed, I think, to carve out coalitions in the past when you really didn't think he could hang on. So he could potentially once again do that. But you know what's actually fascinating about this one? Bibi didn't go to the U.S. on the eve of this election, as he's done several times in the past, making state visits, flaunting the relationship that he has with Washington. And he didn't do that, obviously, with Biden in office. Maybe he didn't get an invite there. But he was also stopped, we understand, from coming here to the UAE, apparently to play up his foreign policy credentials post-Abraham Accords. You know, usually Israeli elections are decided on the question of security first, and everything else is secondary. But you got to wonder just how vulnerable Mr. Netanyahu really is on this one.